This video is the short video, the fact-based video that tries to cut to the chase and tell you what I did to get my EQ8-RH mount to guide from this to this. So I'm not suggesting that you're automatically going to get an RMS that is like 0.25 total and below by applying the configuration and settings that I'm discussing in this video. And indeed, my tracking have been roughly on average 0.35, sometimes below, sometimes a bit above, but it's still been a really good, consistent tracking ever since. The 0.25 was absolutely amazing, and yeah, I do achieve that from time to time, but when you average it out over hours and hours of tracking, then I'd say roughly 0.35 is where I'm at right now, but I'm working on improving that as well. And if you're having problems with getting your guiding to work well, I will produce a slightly longer video that talks about the details around what I tried and what did work and what didn't work, that hopefully can give you some more insight. And otherwise, there's always the comments field. Please feel free to just ask questions and I'll try to answer them at my best of my ability. And on that note, I thought I'd just finish off with a little picture that came out of all of these trial and tribulations. I've not changed very much on the Green Swamp server. I did some experimentation with the PPEC and the PPEC training, but I did not perform the PPEC training in ideal circumstances where the tracking should be switched on, it should have stabilized, and it should be running really steadily, and then you should be run the PPEC training. And I didn't, so I can't say this has been thoroughly tested, and the jury is still out as to what kind of impact this have on the overall guiding. So in the GSS server main settings, the only thing I changed is really the baud rate and COM6. The rest of these values are left as they were. Refraction was already switched on. I did switch on the encoders, and I tried that off and on, and the RA is definitely improved with the encoders. When I was running PPEC, I was running the alternate PPEC, which means that the guiding pulses and the PPEC corrections are not fighting each other. It's used when you're not using a hand controller and going with a direct USB connection. Then I switched on go to deck pulse, which effectively replaces the pulse command with a go to command instead. And I forgot to switch it off, and I actually haven't done exhaustive testing with it on and off to verify what impact it has, but this has been a part of the configuration I eventually used to achieve fairly good guiding. The rest are left as they were, all of these are set as default, and that is all the changes are actually done on the Green Swamp server. In the PHD2 Advanced Settings, the Global tab, there's only one thing I changed, and this is actually a fairly significant one. I set that the dither setting in RA only. Spiral is an alternative as well if you got declination backlash, but the RA only, for me, it made a difference from utter chaos to barely noticeable. So if you've got an EQ8 mount with a considerable backlash in deck, then this is an option I would strongly recommend. In the camera tab setting, I've actually ended up changing nothing. I tried with pretty much all of these different configurations, including noise reduction and time lapse and the auto exposure, you name it. I tried pretty much all of it. None of it really improved the guiding in any significant way. The camera specific properties, I just effectively left them the way they were automatically discovered by setting up the profile using the profile wizard. Under the guiding tab, the only thing I've changed is really reverse deck output after meridian flip. And this is obviously not needed for continuous guiding, but I did experience some problem after meridian flip and actually ticked this, and after that it worked better. But I still need to go back and verify that this is genuinely needed. Otherwise, I've experimented with most of the values here, but I haven't really had any good positive effects. So as it stands right now, none of these have been modified. However, I did get an error when I did a calibration at one time. It was saying that the angle between RA and DEC was too much, and this option is actually ignoring that and allowing the guiding to happen without that value being taken into account. I should have tested it, but I didn't get a chance to, so that is definitely a value that is worth testing moving forward. Under the Algorithms tab, I have done a few changes. But in the right ascension, I consistently use the hysteresis algorithm. It just has worked best for me. I've not changed the default value. I did some experiments, but it didn't turn out very well, so I just kept that at 10. Aggressiveness 100. I've tried with other values. 100 seems to be the sweet spot. It might overreact a bit sometimes, but when I lower it, it's not reacting quickly enough, so I kept it at 100. 0.16, it just turns out to be the sweet spot. I have very rarely touched this since that was suggested and I ran it the first time. Also kept the max RA duration at the same default value. So declination, similar story there. I've been doing the resist switch from the beginning. I tried a few others, but every time the declination backlash can come into play, it has negative effects. So the resist switch is the perfect algorithm because it's trying to avoid changing guiding direction if it can. Same thing, aggressiveness 100, tried with other values, 100 is best. 0.25 seems to be a bit of a sweet spot. 0.20, I've used that as well with great success and even crept below 0.20. Depends on the scene conditions. So I'd say if you want to tune anything to the specific conditions, this is probably the most tunable parameter. Also tick the fast switch for large deflections as well. It effectively means that if there is a huge movement, it skips the history of movements and just corrects straight away, and that's really good to compensate for backlash when that rears its ugly head. I also have the backlash compensation enabled. I tried with guide only north and south, and that works great, but this is kind of like an all-round solution where I don't need to go in and do anything manually, and it works quite well. It needs to settle for a bit, but once it's going, it's really good. And I used that in combination with modifying the max deck duration to 5,000. So if it ever goes pear-shaped in the declination, it would actually be able to restore and get back to the original position much quicker by just allowing the max deck duration to be a bit higher. And as I mentioned, I'm running the guide mode in both directions and let the algorithm decides what's best. So let's sum up the settings I've been using for the successful guiding so far. Firstly, with Green Swamp Server, I've enabled the encoders and I enabled the go-to deck pulse. On the PHD2 side, it will start with the global settings, then all I've done here is set the dither settings to RA only. And on the camera, it pretty much defaults throughout. Worth mentioning that even though it's not set explicitly here, it's a 4-second exposure that's been most successful for me with my setup and with my guide camera. On the guiding side, the only thing really is reverse deck output after meridian flip, which doesn't really affect the ongoing guiding as such, and even this setting is something I need to do some more testing around. And then the algorithms for right ascension is the hysteresis that I'm using, and I'm using the default settings except the minimum move, where I found 0.16 being the perfect setting for me. And on the declination, I've been using resist switch throughout, and most of these have been the defaults. 0.25 with the minimum move has been very, very good. 0.20 has been working well as well, and sometimes I drop below 0.20, but 0.25 seems to be the all-round value here that gives really good guiding. I also enabled this fast switch for large deflections, so it's a bit more responsive to when the deck backlash rears its ugly head. And I also enabled the backlash compensation, and that works quite well even with the default values here. I've modified the max deck duration to 5,000 to allow it to restore the guiding a bit quicker back to its original position if there is a declination backlash issue. and the rest are really the default values. I hope you found that useful. Feel free to ask questions in the comments field, and I will be working on a slightly longer video that will be a bit more exhaustive and talk a bit more about the different things I've tried that might give you a few ideas and so on if your guiding hasn't improved or you can't get it to work properly. So thank you very much for watching.